People ask, how is it being in the Ukraine, my first time? Well, I have to say I had wonderful hosts last night that fed me borscht, chicken Kiev, and vodka. I said, how good could this be? Yay. So thank you very much. You all get things done, or you wouldn't be in the room. But I've spent the last 35 years uncovering the principles that are at play when we get things done in the most elegant ways. I discovered these for myself first because I'm as likely to be out of control and unfocused as anybody. And by the way, I am a fellow student for everything I will share with you here, still. Because it seems like the better we get, the better we had better get. And as you graduate, if you haven't noticed, life does not become simpler. It becomes more complex. And as the four previous speakers have indicated, it's a different world. And it's a different world coming to us. And in my experience, we need a better set of best practices to be able to surf on top of this world instead of feeling frustrated and overwhelmed by it. And there are ways to do that. So I'm going to give you, first of all, some high-level why. Why is this important? And then I'll give you some of the what and some of the how about how to do it. The nice thing about this is that you don't really need to learn anything new. This is not like some foreign language or some new technology. You're actually all doing all of the behaviors I'll be recommending and reminding you about. Very few people do them as well as they could. And when you do, it can produce transformational results, at least based upon lots of feedback from lots of people over the last 35 years that I've worked with. We gave you a little note page here. So at one point, I will invite you to actually do a little exercise to taste a couple of the key behaviors that I'll be talking about. So let me really start this by asking an interesting question to me. How are things in your head office? Where is your head office? For most people I meet, your head office is right here. The problem is, it's a crappy office. Your brain did not evolve to remember, remind, prioritize, or manage relationships between, guess how many things before it becomes suboptimal? That's it. Read any of the new cognitive science data that's shown up in the last 10 or 15 years. Your brain sucks as an office. Now, your brain actually evolved to do some very, very cool, creative, brilliant stuff. It's doing it right now. You're using long-term history and pattern recognition to go, that's a chair, that's a person, that's a light, that's a screen, as opposed to these are vibrations of light and sound. In other words, your brain evolved to survive over these millions of years by recognizing what was going on in your environment in that way extremely well. Computers can barely even start to do that. It's brilliant. But you go to the store for lemons and you come back with 6 things and no lemons. What happened? You tried to use this as your office, and it doesn't work. As a matter of fact, if you have more than 4 things going on just in your psyche, in your mind, you will tend to be driven and make decisions off of what's latest and what's loudest in your world, not by using strategic, intuitive intelligence. Don't shoot me. I'm just a messenger. I discovered this just myself experientially over 30 years ago. This basic principle, folks, that your mind is for having ideas, but it's not for holding them. And the one thing that's changed in the world, and I'll reinforce what several of our folks have talked about already, there's nothing new in the world except how frequently it is. Nothing new except how frequently things are new. How many times, think about it, did your parents have to totally reconfigure their life, undo everything, refocus, recalibrate their whole life and work? Maybe a few times in their lives. Most all of us in this room, probably this year. So how quickly and how fast can you deal with surprise? How quickly, how fast can you integrate new information, new experience, new technology? Undo the old way you were doing it, put in the new stuff appropriately, calibrate all of it in a new relationship that works, and focus and be clear. It's a martial art. What do you need to get done? This is about getting things done. Well, over these years, I discovered that there are 6 levels that we make commitments, that we have commitments with ourselves, and many times with other people as well. And this horizon of commitments, as I call it, is true for you personally. It's true also for your enterprise, your companies. The top level of commitment that you need to get done is fulfill your life purpose. Why are you here? How are you doing, by the way, as a human being? Give yourself a good grade? Is your life on purpose? Is it off purpose? And what are the core values that you have you need to maintain? What's really, really, really important to you? You don't care where you work as long as what's true. You don't care where you live as long as what's true. You don't care who you live with as long as what's true. If you have answers to those, and you do, whether you're conscious of them or not, those are driving a lot of what you need to get done. Fulfill this. Now, is knowing your life purpose going to help you decide which email to write tonight first? A little bit. You're probably going to need to get clear about some different levels of your commitments. The next level down hierarchically would be, what are the things that you need to do to become wildly successful in fulfilling your purpose? So you may have a very similar purpose to someone sitting next to you, but how you're going to manifest that and wild success 5 years from now may be quite different. It may be running a toy business. It may be being a baker. Maybe being an educator. Who knows? But that would be a next level of things to get done, is to manifest your vision of success. Where do you want to be, career-wise, lifestyle-wise? Where does your company need to be when it grows up? Next level of stuff to get done. Is knowing your vision going to help you decide which email to write first? A little bit more. And then you're probably going to need to get a little more operational and say, okay, what do I need to accomplish in terms of key objectives and goals over the next 3 to 24 months? If any of you do annual strategic or operational planning, that would be at this level of commitment. What needs to be true by the end of 2020 in order to get where you're going? That's something else to get done. And then there's another level many people don't really realize, but it's going on all the time. What are all the things you need to maintain at some level of standard so that you can get where you want to go with health and balance? personally? How's your health, energy? How's your finances? How's your relationships? How's your fun factor? You know, as we just heard, if fun is critical to do business well, how are you doing? In your businesses, this would be your organization chart, asset management, staff development, product design, marketing, sales, operations, executive. These would be roles that you have and accountabilities. You don't finish growing sales. You just need to make sure they're operating at some functional level. How are you doing there? That's a lot of stuff to get done. If you ate lunch, that's this level, taking care of your body and energy. Is getting clear about your job description and all those areas of accountability you need to maintain, is that going to help you decide which email to write first? A little bit more. Then I have the question, you got anything to finish about all of that? I have a broad definition of project. Anything that's going to take more than one action to complete the outcome you're committed to. Your next holiday is a project. Fixing the tooth that hurts is a project. Getting your kids into the appropriate school for the next school year is a project. Hiring the vice president of marketing is a project. Those are all projects by my definition. Most of you have between 30 and 100 of those right now, if you include personal as well as professional. That's a lot more stuff to get done. And frankly, you don't have any doing yet till you get to the ground level of commitment. And that's all the physical, visible activities and actions you need to take to move the needle on any of the above stuff. Emails to send, stuff to buy at the store, stuff to go over with your life partner, stuff to talk to your assistant about, stuff to bring up at your board meeting. Those are the real action levels of things. Now, ideally, all of these are going to be lined up. Your actions are completing projects, that are part of your accountabilities, that are moving you toward the goals, that it's going to help you manifest your vision, which is going to be fulfilling your purpose. How are you doing? Now, wouldn't it be nice if you woke up in the morning and somebody handed you this clear menu? That'd be just so great. Doesn't show up that way. How does it show up? That's how it shows up. So if you're going to be getting done all of the things that you appropriately need to get done, given your commitments with yourself and everybody else in life, you're going to have to make sense out of this world. And it's not going to be handed to you on a silver platter or in a nice pink-bowed gift. You're going to have to thread through this using some high-performance best practices. Now, there is a way to get there. Actually, there really is. It's possible, by the way, to be totally buried with a huge amount of complex things you're committed to get done and have absolutely nothing on your mind. I'm actually demonstrating that, whether you believe it or not. There's actually not much going on up here. Except this. Could it be? Oh man, I got a lot of that too. There is a way to get through this, and I steal an image and a phrase from the martial arts. I did get a black belt in karate in my 20s, and I steal an image that represents what the most productive state would be to thread through all this. Mind like water. I think Bruce Lee's sensei communicated that to him, that somehow you need to be like water. Water looks like it's weak, but no, it's not. Just look at what water has created and creates in our world regularly. Is the water confused? Not at all. The water appropriately engages with the environment and ecosystem it finds itself in. whether that's a calm pond or a rushing river. It's not confused. However, if you're taking one meeting emotionally into the next, or you're taking work in your mind to home, or home in your mind to work, you are not in a mind-like water state. Now, people then say, oh, David, I could get here if I had more time. Yeah, right. How much time does it take to have a good idea? 0. How much time does it take to be creative? 0. How much time does it take to be strategic? 0. How much time does it take to be simply loving and present with your kids? 0. And yet most people would say those are kind of the golden things in life. Being creative, being innovative, being present. How do you think you need to be to deal with the world that's been described to you that's coming at us? You don't need time to do those things, but you need something very, very important. What's that? You need room. If you don't have any room left in your psyche, if you got your brain wrapped around something that happened at 10 o'clock this morning and haven't sort of engaged with that appropriately yet, and it's taking up your psychic room, you don't have time to be creative, innovative, strategic, or present. So you need clear space. I know in the martial arts, years ago when I trained, in the higher levels of training in the martial arts, a number of that focus is on meditative kind of practices. Clear your mind. Now, there may be a spiritual component to it, but there's a very practical component to it, folks. If 4 people attack you in a dark alley, you do not want to have 2,000 unprocessed emails hanging in your psyche. You need to be clear, yo, okay, let's go have a beer, right? Mind like, well, whatever. What would you do, by the way, right now? This may be one of the biggest challenges I'll give all of you in this room. What would you do if you had absolutely nothing pulling on your psyche? Clear space. Absolutely clear space. How would you use that? What would you do? Sleep more? No kidding. Boy, is that a big need out there these days. I guarantee you that the methodology that I discovered and uncovered and expressed in getting things done, that if you apply those basic practices, it absolutely, without fail, will give you more space. How you use that space will be unique to you. A lot of people use it simply to be more creative. A lot of people think my stuff is about structure and organization only to the degree that it gives you room to be more creative. I'm not a naturally organized guy. Ask my wife. I'm a naturally lazy guy. I hate to have a thought twice. I hate being distracted by stuff that I can't do something about. It gets in the way of my ability to be relaxed and spontaneous and follow my intuitive hunches. That's why I came up with this, because that's what I love. A lot of champions of my methodology are pretty well known in the entertainment world, in the creative worlds out there. Some people use that space to just be more strategic, because getting more space allows you more regularly, day to day, week to week, see at a little longer horizon, so you're not too deep down in the weeds all the time, which is where a lot of your stress is going to come from. And a lot of people just experience being able to watch their kids play football without being on their iPhone. Some of you parents know how transformational that would be, that you don't miss your kids growing up out in front of you simply because you're wrapped around the digital axles. I coached the head of the World Bank, and his presenting issue to me was, he said, David, when I go home with my young kids on the weekend, I do not want to take the World Bank with me. No kidding. Now, simply being present is going to make you healthier. You're going to have more oxygen getting to your brain. You'll have more creative ideas. So it's, in and of itself, a great end result. But there's a very practical reason. The very practical reason is very much like in the martial arts. If you're not present, you're not ready for what's coming after. You're not ready for what's coming toward you. If any of you want to write in your calendars right now, 3 weeks from now, just turn 3 weeks from now and say, David Allen said that within 3 weeks, something is going to occur in your world totally unexpected that's going to blow the hell out of what you think your priorities are. Try me out. The military refers to this as situational awareness. You walk into a situation, quick, you better decide, good guy, bad guy, that's where that goes, that's where that goes. And you need to be able to see 365 degrees, not 360. They're training military officers and just the infantry to have a lot more of that capability. That's why mindfulness training is picking up in the military. Actually, all of this is about becoming elegant in this art and this craft of managing the flow of life's work. And life's work is not going to stop until your life does. Work meaning anything you want to get done that's not done yet. I know quite a number of people who are flunking retirement. They weren't ready for it. And you're all doing actually the behaviors that are part of what this art is. For example, did any of you ever take work home that you had to bring back to work or to a meeting the next day? And do not forget this. This is absolutely critical that you remember to bring it to back wherever that goes. What strategies did you employ to make sure you wouldn't forget it in the morning? Did you ever put something on your keys? Ever put something in front of the door? For this, you got a college degree? Wow. What a sophisticated piece of self-management technology you have invested in your life. Actually, it is. It's quite sophisticated. Why? Well, the night before, some part of you was probably conscious and smart enough to realize that whoever was going to try to walk through the door in the morning may barely be conscious, if at all. What the hell is this? Well, that's right, got to take it with me. What a class act. So, at a time when you could be smart, you came up with a smart decision about a good thing to do, and you parked a reminder in a place that you could be kind of thick and stupid and still do a smart thing. I hope you heard that. Because it's not just about putting things in front of the door. Yeah, that still works. But how about putting things in front of the door of your mind? How many of you have looked at your calendar in the last 2 days? I'm curious. Any of you look at your calendar? Why? To help you orient yourself in space and time. No kidding. So it's putting things in front of your mind, not just in front of your door. What do you need to see before you go into the board meeting? What do you need to look at as a map before you spend the weekend with your family? What do you need to look at to orient yourself in space and time with the things you're committed to do and get done? Big key. Master key to that. The challenge is that you're living a probably much more complex and intricate life and in your work than you may realize. So there are some steps that you need to take to make sure you have the right things in front of you at the right time so you don't miss anything. And you can see what you need to see, when you need to see it, the way you need to see it. Let me give you the methodology in just a few seconds. So hang on, here it comes. You need to make sure that anything potentially meaningful that you can't happen in the moment you think of it, that you can't do in the moment you think of it, that's been captured in some trusted place, that sooner than later you decide exactly what you're going to do about those things, if anything, the actions and the outcomes embedded in them. You need to park the results in some sort of functional categories, in some sort of trusted system that you can trust, that you can see and look at, so you can see exactly all the things that you need to see and relieve your brain of that process of remembering and reminding, which it doesn't do very well. And then keep an overview of all the things you need to get done at all these levels of commitment, so then you're just making trusted choices about what you do. That make sense? Everybody got it? That's it. That is it. So let me apologize. I'm not going to tell you anything different than that for the rest of our time here or the rest of my life if we talk about any of this. But boy, there are some sophisticated levels and excellence levels that most people could still get to about this. Let me give you the simple 5 steps that you would need to go through, and you do go through, whenever you get any situation more focused and under control. 5 steps. They're listed on your piece of paper there, so you don't need to write those down. Quick overview is, boom, capture stuff's got your attention in some external form, write it down, in other words. Clarify exactly what you're going to do about it, if anything. Organize the results appropriately, and step back and reflect on the content so that you're making a trusted choice about how you engage your attention and your activity. Example, any of you ever had your kitchen or your cooking area out of control? Ever come home and it looks like a tornado has hit it and you have guests coming over in an hour? What did you do? Aside from have a drink or decide to go to a restaurant. Well, the first thing you did was you noticed what's off, what's not the way it should be in the kitchen. That's identifying the stuff that has your attention there. Then what did you do? You decided what exactly that stuff meant to you. Oh, that's a dirty dish. Oh, that's a clean dish. Oh, that's good food. Oh, that's bad food. Oh, that's a spice. Then what did you do? What did you do with the spice? You put it where spices go. What did you do with dirty dishes? You put them where they go. I don't want to insult your intelligence. I'm just reminding you of what you did. It wasn't one thing. You went through this process. You captured, clarified, and then organized based upon what you clarified. Then what did you do? You stepped back and reflected on the situation, looked at your watch, and decided to pull butter out of the refrigerator and melt it. This is how you get your kitchen under control. It's how you get your company under control, and it's how you get your consciousness under control. But most people have a pretty big improvement opportunity of doing, as simple as this is, this set of practices for your consciousness. If you want nothing on your mind, it's not free. You actually have to do this. I know, I'm so lazy, folks. If I didn't have to do all this, I would not. Let me unpack these one at a time, give you a little more detail about it. First of all, capture. What does that mean? Well, if I were to coach you, or Slava, wherever Slava, are you around? There he is, over there. There's my guy. If we were to sit down, the first thing we would do with you is actually have you start to identify anything that's on your mind and write it down. I'm curious, by the way, how many of you, while you've been sitting here today, have had your mind go somewhere that has absolutely nothing to do with what's going in here today? Anybody have that happen? Yay, well, if where your mind went while you were sitting here actually was making progress on what you were thinking about, I'd say, great, that's a fabulous place for your mind to go. That's not where most of you went. Where did your mind go? It went to some place you have not captured exactly what it is, clarified exactly what needs to be done about it, or organized the results of that thinking in some trusted place or person. That's why it's on your mind. So you don't have to go very far to see where to start to apply this set of best practices. Notice what's on your mind. So let me have you do a tiny little exercise, and whether you do or not, it's up to you, but I highly recommend you may get some value out of this that you may not realize if you just play along with me for a couple of minutes. So this little exercise that we call the mind sweep, you could use that piece of paper there that we gave you on the back side, the top part of that. I'm going to give you just about a minute and a half, 90 seconds, to take a pen and capture as many things as you can of stuff that's on your mind besides sitting here and listening to me. Projects, things to do, things to handle, stuff that's what's popped into your head while you were in here that you couldn't finish while you were in here. Any of those kind of things. So just take 90 seconds right now and come up with as many things as you can. Write fast. They may come fast. Go. Okay, as long as you have 2 or 3 things to work with, that's fine. How many of you came up with at least 2 or 3 things? I'm curious. How many of you have a sense there's a lot more underneath there? Yeah. I would highly recommend that sooner than later you actually complete this exercise for yourself. Grab it all. Guess how long it takes, by the way, when we coach one-on-one, at least mid to senior level professionals, to actually complete this exercise. That is, to just capture everything that has their attention. Not to organize it, not to prioritize it, just identify what's on their mind. One to 6 hours. I had it take 18 hours for one guy one time. Finally, I just told him, well, you get the idea. He wasn't stupid. He was the chairman of 2 companies. He was one of these people we call a crazy maker. He's just always having an idea, and here's something else we can do. Here's something else we can do. He was just semi-retired, so he didn't have staff following him around to pick up all those things. He still had the habit, just no staff. So he was just running into them. So that's step 1, if you want to start to get control of your consciousness or anything. Identify what's off, what's not, as we say, on cruise control. By the way, I'm speaking rather slowly. I hope that doesn't bother any of you. But our translator, by the way, who's great, Oleg, said, David, can you make sure that you don't talk too fast? Because it takes a lot more Russian words to say some of these English things. By the way, let's give Oleg a big hand, by the way. Usually don't acknowledge the translator, but thank you, Oleg. Now, if you stop here, and a lot of people do, then you're likely to become a compulsive list maker. And now you have lists stuck all over everywhere. You've got them on your refrigerator, you have them on your computer, you have them on 14 different places in your wherever. So the next step, very important one, critical one, is to take all those things you've collected, which, by the way, includes all the emails and social media and WhatsApps that are showing up right now while you're sitting here. And you then need to put them through a process, which I'll get to in a second. This slide is just reminding you need tools for collecting. You have all these tools, or have access to them anyway. Low tech, that's what I use 95% of the time to capture ideas and commitments I make. Because I no batteries, no Wi-Fi, instant on. And you know, one of the most powerful tools I've had in my life for the last 35 years is right here. Because God knows when ideas are going to show up. So By the way, the older you get, it's not senility, it is sophistication. That your good ideas will not show up where you're going to implement that idea. You'll be buying bread at the store, thinking of something to bring up in the marketing meeting. You'll be in the marketing meeting remembering you need bread. So if you only want to have those thoughts once, you better have a tool that's with you all the time to grab all of that stuff I do. High tech is okay too, as long as you have the discipline to empty out where you're throwing that stuff. A lot of people don't. So that becomes another black hole in your life. The way you empty it out is not necessarily to finish what all those things mean, but to define what they mean, which is the real important step here of step 2. Clarify. And what does that mean? Well, what are the questions you need to ask and answer about every email as you read it? Or any of the notes that you're taking in here today? By the way, a lot of those notes for you, let me see. How many of you are taking notes into today or have taken notes? Where a lot of those notes are probably going to wind up is what I call the stacks. What's a stack? You pick it up and you go, and you put it back on the stack. Or you open the email and you go, and close it up. No light at the end of that tunnel, as we say. What you really need to do is ask and answer these questions. The first question you need to ask and answer is, what the hell is this email? Why did I get it? What are they asking me to do, if anything? Then the first distinction you need to make, once you answer what the thing is it something you have a commitment to move on or not? I would call that, is it actionable or not? There are 2 optional answers to that question. Yes and no. I know this is deep and technical, but stick with me. Oh, many of you in your life, if I go in there right now, have stuff you have not made that distinction about. Now, we get a lot of things into our world, and a lot of the notes that you're taking, you may look at and say, nah, there's no action on that. That could be one of 3 things. First of all, it could be something you now don't need or didn't need to begin with, trash. It could be something that you say, he had some good ideas, I might want to come back and refer to them at some point. That's reference. And some things you might say, there was nothing to do about that right now, but in a couple of months after we rebudget, that might be something to bring into the agenda. Incubate, on hold, potential action later. Now, I would imagine of the things you probably wrote down a few minutes ago, and by the way, I'm going to have you make these decisions about 1 or 2 of those things anyway. If it is something you're committed to move on, then you need to answer a very, very important question that's going to show up in tiny little type here, but it should be in 6,000 point type. The question I have if I sat down with you right now is, what's the very next action that you would need to take to get closure on that thing you wrote down? Now, a few of you may have actually written the next action to take of what you wrote down. 95% of you did not. You still have to make that decision. What would be the next thing to do if I had nothing else to do in my life but finish whatever the first 1 or 2 things are you wrote down on your list? Send an email, surf the web, have a conversation face-to-face with someone, buy something at the store. What's the very next thing you would need to do? Once you make that decision, then you've got a couple of other decisions to make about that. First of all, if you can actually do that action in less than 2 minutes, you should do it right then, simply because it would take you longer to organize it than to do it. If you can't do it in 2 minutes, then you should ask yourself, are you the right person to do it? And if not, you need to hand it off to whoever should be doing that action. And if you can't do that, it takes longer than 2 minutes to do it, and there's no one to hand it off to, that's then what you need to park in your inventory of reminders of actions you need to take whenever the context and time is appropriate to take them. By the way, most of you have over 150 of those right now. If you were to do a total inventory on the average, most professional people, how many of those would be in your inventory of possible things you need to do? Errands you need to run, things to go over with your assistant, things to buy at the store, things to do at the computer, etc. One final thing you need to ask and answer to get clarification on whatever it is you wrote down is, will one action finish this thing, whatever this thing is? Will one action complete it? If not, you have a project, by my broad definition. So let me ask you to do something. It's just another 90 seconds. Pick something off the list that you made, if you made one, and make these decisions. And by the way, what this is going to do is move you from the typical kind of to-do list, which if you look at that, well, let me ask, how many of you have something kind of like a to-do list anywhere? I guarantee you 99% of every to-do list I've ever seen when I sit down with someone is nothing but an incomplete list of still unclear stuff, which produces almost as much stress as the list itself relieves, because you're reminding yourself of decisions to make you haven't done, thinking to do you haven't finished yet. That's not very attractive. Outcomes and actions about those things is a whole lot easier to engage in, both motivation-wise, thought-wise, and physically. If you like to see football, I assume you do, guess what a football player, what's on their mind when they're on the field once the game has started? 2 things. Where's the goal? What's the next play? Where's the goal? What's the next play? Where's the goal? Where's the next play? Oh, sure, you'll have strategies and plans, but the next play is going to change whatever the next play is. So how are you doing in life? Most people have a big improvement opportunity of making the outcome, the goal decisions about what they've got attention on and the next action. So as Yaron said, he's an optimist, but our mission as a company is to create a world where there are no problems, only projects. If there's a problem, that means that you think something could, would, should, needs to be done about it, or at least explored about it. So framing this starts to become the game. Where's the goal? What's the next play? So take a couple of minutes and take anything that you dropped out of your head, and you'll see down below on there, if you wanted to write it there, what's the very next action on any of those things? And if one action won't finish it, how would you define the project embedded in it? Go. Okay. How many of you came up with at least one clarified next action and one clarified project? Any of you get that far with any of this? Okay, great. I hate to stop any of you doing this right now, because this could be some of the most powerful stuff you could do to get your head clear if you want that space. Usually, over the years, for the thousands of hours I've spent one-on-one with just some of the busiest people and brightest people you'd ever meet, walking them through the implementation of this set of best practices, it usually takes 1 to 6 hours to just generate the mind sweep list, and then the rest of 2 complete days, sometimes longer, to do what you were just doing. Have them make action and project decisions about what all of those things mean to them. And the results are phenomenal in terms of their feeling of confidence, sense of clarity about their priorities. Once they do that, I don't tell them anything about what content should be there. That's for other consultants. I just get them to clear their own head and make these critical decisions. It's a powerful thought process. We've seen whole organizational cultures, by the way, change with just adding 2 questions into their organizational vocabulary. What are we trying to accomplish? What's the next action? You ever been in a meeting that they didn't clarify what the meeting purpose was to achieve by what time? I wouldn't even go. Ever been in a meeting where they talked and they talked and they talked, but nobody made the decision about what they actually decided and what the next step was on that and who was accountable for it? We've seen this change whole cultures when they start to bring outcome and action thinking into their vocabulary. Come on, folks, that's the essence of productivity. What are you trying to produce, and how do you allocate or reallocate resources to make them happen? So if you just tasted a tiny little bit of that, that's the sort of micro implementation of a very powerful macro principle for yourself. Then once you do that, you then need to park that somewhere. You might not want to throw that piece of paper away that you just did. Why? I don't want to lose my thinking. No kidding. That's why I get organized, so I don't have to lose my thinking about anything. I've already done the thinking. I'll do choosing later on from the results of having thought. And you don't need a very complex system to manage what you're coming up with there. You just need to make sure that where you park stuff matches what it means. In a simple way, organizational categories could be this simple. You need a project list, by the way. Very few people have one, or have one that's current or complete. That's powerful. You then need to keep track of the actions you need to take that come in 2 flavors. Some actions have to happen specifically on days and times. Those go on your calendar. And then a lot of actions just need to happen in and around your calendar when you have time to do them. And those could go just on one next actions list. You also need a list of all the things you're waiting on for other people to do, actions and projects that you've either delegated or that you're waiting on to happen so you can keep going on stuff. Pretty simple. And as terms of tools, all you need is something that can keep these lists. And any kind of a list manager works. My system is the methodology of GTD is system independent. I've got people that use any one of the 300 software apps that have built around this. And a lot of people are using paper. They've discovered paper sometimes is much better in terms of reminder pages. And you don't need a very complex system for reference material. Obviously you need trash, but you also need a good reference system that can hold both digital reference material as well as paper-based reference material so you don't let that stuff pile up around you and constipate your workflow. You used to be able to go fast right into wherever that system is, where you're going to park that, so you can find it later on. And also another list very few people have that's a very creative list is someday maybe. What are the ideas I don't want to lose, but I don't have the bandwidth or resources right now to move on it, but I want to keep that idea available to me for the right time, potentially to move on later. So it doesn't have to be a very complex list. We're now teaching this methodology to 8, 9, and 10-year-old kids. They get it. They do. They just have very different content than you might, but they still have to go through these processes. A chairman of a company or CEO comes back from the board meeting with meeting notes. They still have to open their briefcase or their pack and take out those notes and business cards or maybe receipts from the lunch and do something with them. A 9-year-old still needs to empty his or her pack at the end of the week and make sure the notes from the teacher get to the parent. Same principle, different content. Then, of course, if you don't look at your list, it's not going to help much either. So you do need to step back and use these maps, if you will, these orienting tools of list of commitments, and look at them as frequently as you need to maintain appropriate perspective. That's why you look at a calendar, is to give yourself perspective in time and space. Where am I? If you look at your calendar over the next month, you will think of different things than if you only look at it for the next 2 days. I do both. And then, of course, that gets you to the last step, which is probably the critical one, which is doing. How do you engage? Well, if you've done the first 4 steps, choosing what to do becomes a whole lot easier once you see what all the options are and they're out in front of you. And you're not making this choice out of just whatever's latest or whatever's loudest. You can step back and see the whole game. But you can only feel comfortable about what you're not doing when you know what you're not doing. The only reason I can stand up here or be anywhere and be totally present without anything going on is I looked at all the rest of it not long ago and said, "You're it." I may have made a mistake. I don't know. I'll find out. But as far as I'm concerned, I looked at my whole life and said, being here is exactly where I need to be, doing what I need to be doing, and nothing else has popped into my mind. In a way, it's that simple. So the world is coming at us like this, but if you have these best practices built in as habitual behaviors and installed and implemented in your life, so you're not thinking about them, you're just doing them. And if you're clear enough about these levels, about what to do, given your own commitments with yourself and or your organization, then you get to be in this state. But mind like water, water is not necessarily always this calm. As a matter of fact, some of you are going to walk back into this tonight, maybe. But guess what? That's okay, as long as you got a good board. And as long as, if you fall off that board, which you will, me too, you've got something tied to that board. By the way, got behind. Mind like water. Water could look like this. But you'll notice if he falls off, he's got a way to get back on real quick. So I'll be bold enough to share with you, or to say to you, that what I just shared with you is the board you can surf on top of the game of all of these commitments and complexity. And if you fall off, and you will, you know why? It's the people who are most productive, most creative, most aspirational who fall off most regularly. Why? They create more than they can handle at the moment. They just need to catch up. I fall off regularly. If you're not falling off, you may not be playing a big enough game. I just don't stay off. I recognize when I'm off, and I know how to get back on. I capture, clarify, organize, step back and look at the new game, then make a new intuitive, intelligent decision about what to do. Again, if you want any of the latest cognitive science stuff out there, I think, Slava, these are all in Russian now, right? Yeah. So they're all GTD fans, by the way. But if you want some of the cognitive science data about your head as a crappy office, stop doing that. You know, there's lots of ways you could see how to do that. You know, current stuff out there. And one final thing is a white paper, 2 cognitive science researchers at the University of Brussels, Free University there, deep cognitive science researchers came across Getting Things Done, were fascinated by how it worked and why it worked so well. And they wrote, that's a long, complex, 30-page white paper on the science behind this. Just one small thing from that. Francis Heiligen, the key author of that study, his expertise is in insect behavior. Have you ever had 2 ants in your kitchen and then 200. Why? Well, the worker ant is programmed to go hunt for food. If they happen to find food, they're programmed to take it back to the nest. But when they found food, when they take it back, they're dropping a pheromone trail. The next worker ant shows up and goes, pheromones, yo, let's go that way. Until the food runs out, the pheromone trail runs out, then they're gone. So the conclusion to that is they're stupid, they have no memory, but they do highly effective stuff. It is so nice to not have to be smart or aware or conscious all the time. But to have done that sufficiently, park the results sufficiently, so I can be kind of dumb and stupid and happy and not have to remember anything. That is so cool. I do a lot of smart things when I'm kind of dumb. And that's really a nice place to operate from. Now, at 74, I'm still learning. But I've been doing this for 35 years, and I can tell you it makes a huge, huge difference in your energy, your creativity, and your ability to navigate the world of change coming to you, not only to allow you to be able to integrate it with less stress, but to give you the space to be as creative and intuitive as you're going to need to be to figure out what you need and want to do in the new world and how to do that. So again, bold enough to tell you the sort of bottom line here. But again, at 74, I discovered, kind of cranky and direct is sort of fun, so I'll tell you, this stuff really works if you work it. But you have to work it. It's not hard, but you're not born doing these behaviors or these practices. They can be learned, they can be practiced, and they can be made habitual, but they don't start out that way. It's like anything else. Come on, it takes 2 years to learn to play the banjo. It takes 2 years to learn Italian. It takes 2 years to learn to cook spaghetti. I don't know how long it takes to learn to raise kids or learn Dutch. I'm trying to learn Dutch. I think that the rest of my life. We'll see. So that's really the game. So I've covered sort of the big why, some of the what, and a little of the how here. So now time to engage with you folks with questions you may have about any of this. Very happy to address whatever may have popped into your head about this.
All right. Thank you. Give a round of applause. Воу. Ну что ж, друзья, время вопросов. Есть первый вопрос. Headphones? Yes.
Дэвид, очень приятно видеть. Я на самом деле из Москвы и была когда-то на мероприятии московском. И сегодня поняла, что основную вещь, которую использую из того, что я тогда услышала, я своей команде говорю по поводу проекта любого, к которому мы идем. Ребята, а что в финале? То есть вот это прояснение, что мы делаем, реально открывает следующий шаг достаточно легко. За это большая благодарность. И вопрос такой. Наверняка по всему миру кто-то уже пытался сделать какое-то приложение, которое позволяет не на бумаге выписывать, а все-таки как-то фиксировать в гаджете ваш метод. Если да, то в какой стране изобрели самое лучшее, на ваш взгляд, такое приложение? Спасибо.
Beats me. Have no idea. Well, any list manager works. And by the way, at last count, there were over 300 apps that had been built around the Getting Things Done model. They're all just list managers with different kind of bells and whistles on them. But any of those things work. Quite frankly, there's probably no better list manager than the Palm Pilot. Any of you ever old enough to remember the Palm Pilot?
Yes.
Oh my God, what a great tool that was. Oh, so cool, so simple, so fast. And it looked great in a dark bar. Anyway, So list managers, any of them work. I know people that use Excel to do this. I know people that will do this in a word processor. I know people that use any of the multiple apps that are out there. The best thing to do is find somebody around you who kind of gets getting things done, and they're using some app. You want to see how they do it. You'll learn a lot from them, and there are a lot of forums about GTD on the web. And check with Slava. He knows, he's already got a number of GTD people here, and Dmitry in Moscow. So if you connect with our folks there, they have a lot of information about which ones are out there now. They're changing by the day. There are new ones out there. And everybody thinks the new is going to fix them. No, you're going to have to go for the new, which is still not going to fix you. But once you get this, you can make any tool work. You really can, as long as you work it. It just needs to be very available to you so it is not too much work to get to it. Interestingly, I know a number of people in the high-tech world that are going back to paper planners, especially if they have attention disorder issues, ADD, ADHD. The reason is there are too many clicks on the computer to get to a list, whereas the paper is right there and in your face. Neither one is perfect. But you have to decide what are you most comfortable with, where do you currently make lists, and use that, and then explore as you go further on.
David, when you coach executives, just to understand a bit better, so let's say they take 2 days off, they sit with you, they clean everything, write the list, sort it into projects, etc. And then the first day of work, they come, they have another 100 emails in their inbox, and they need another time to process all that, the projects, priorities. So practically speaking, what changes do they make in how they organize their day, their calendar, their meetings that help them to then stay with this and complete and not be overwhelmed with the new incoming stuff?
Good question. Good question. Some of the behaviors executives get immediately, but I've seen them after 2 days of our coaching them, they do and keep doing forever. First of all, for executives, the waiting for list is critical. Just critical. Most executives have not kept track of that stuff. And so they wait until it blows up or falls through some major crack before they try to follow up on it. Wrong approach. So that's the first one. Learning the value of some of these lists in that way is a big change for a lot of them. A lot of them sort of grew up in a culture where writing things down looks elementary. Oh, that's for our first line people, is to write stuff down. I do it all in my head. Who are you kidding? Grow up, act your age, write it all down. Another thing they learn is they need to dedicate at least an hour a day to process new incoming inputs. If they're letting themselves get booked wall to wall all day, they're going to get an hour behind. So a number of executives I coach decide to set up between 7:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning. They show up in no meetings. That's when they clean house. That's where they get current before the sort of madness of the day is on them. So that's another one. Doing regular reviews weekly, what we call the weekly review, where you build in 1 to 2 hours at the end of a work week where you step back and see the whole picture game. It is the greatest need out there at the executive levels is reflection time. And what getting things done does is it gives you really good content to reflect on. And it allows you to keep this stuff current, because you can fall off this wagon pretty fast if you're not really working the system. Those are some immediate things. And one other thing is integrating personal and professional lives. There's no difference for most executives. They're just on about their personal life, their business life, but to give themselves permission to have as much integrity with how they manage the personal side of their life as well as their business side is huge, huge for many of them. Because that's where a lot of their stress is coming from, is they now have elder care for their parents. They now have kids in college. They now have investments and things they need to manage. They now have boards that they're on, yada, yada. And to give themselves permission to integrate all of that together as a systematic approach, that's also huge. Well, those are the main things I've seen immediately a lot of executives just take as soon as they experience the coaching.
Okay, thank you. Пожалуйста.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much. My name is Natalia. I've just a couple of years ago understood that I will not grow up more as a manager until I will get this coach technique. So I graduated actually and put it in and built it inside. Despite this system, and you were one of the, let's say, reference that were during my study, so I'm just admired to see you here and to listen to you. But my question is, despite the thing that it looks very simple, we all understand it's not that simple as it is. In which, how you, let's say, how you play with the motivation, in which step? Because there is, motivation is, let's say, one of the core issue inside of all the getting things done for the person. You as a coach, how you use it? I mean, where, in which step? I mean, what is your, let's say, experience in all this with motivation?
Yeah, I'm not a motivational speaker.
No, not the motivational speaker, but through these 1, 2, 3, 5 steps.
Through those steps?
Yes, and these steps, I mean, as I said, it's simple, it looks simple, but it's
They
definitely
can fall off on
yes,
any
it's,
of them.
it's not as simple.
Commonly,
But how you do this in your practice, in your experience as a coach?
Well, all I can do is give you the experience of these steps, and then how you follow on with them. I'm still working with our company on building reinforcement tools that then bring you back to the thing, because you're likely to fall off. How do I keep coming back to it, being brought back to it? I don't know how to do that really well. I'm a good presenter, but I'm a terrible trainer. I don't have the patience. I don't. So I had to hire instructional designers and people who are much better at that than me to figure out how to deliver this education in a way that makes it stick better. It took me 25 years to figure out what I figured out, and that it was unique, and that nobody else did it, and that it absolutely worked, to then write the book. But I figured it would take the rest of my life to figure out how to get it to stick and get you to stick with it. I don't know how to do that. I am not a motivational speaker. I don't teach habit change. I know a lot of good people who do. You know, I've got my own habits I need to work on changing as well. So basically all I could do is present the information, have you experience that information as best I could, and then you have to then pick up the ball and keep going with it to whatever degree you need to keep going with it. But if you live here, I mean, check with Slava, because he's part of our program that we're implementing to help, you know, reinforce all of this. It really helps to have a good tool. So if you take the fundamental trainings with Slava, you're doing a day and a half, aren't you now, Slava? So the half day afterwards, you bring your own tool in and actually use it to implement. That helps a ton. Once you've got, you know, a way to kind of keep going, and you can experience the power of that, and you know, how cool that is to, you know, start to feel more in control in that way. Especially if you like your gear. If you've got a cool tool, that helps. Yeah. So that's the best I can tell you, you know, really. But people fall off any one of these 5 steps very easily. A lot of people don't keep everything out of their head, so they don't really trust what's on their list. A lot of people don't make next action decisions about things and just keep the stuff still spinning out there without real decisions about actions and outcomes. A lot of people don't have a good trusted external system that they maintain and keep current. And a lot of people don't reflect on all of this stuff on a consistent basis so they can keep a really viable external brain functioning for themselves. 2 years. I've seen the best. It can take 2 years before it's automatic. You know, you get value immediately. Some of you got value just sitting here making a couple of action decisions about stuff. That'll help. So, but to make this part of your life and work style, where you'd feel uncomfortable not doing this, that can take a little while, but so what? You'd be another day older tomorrow anyway, might as well.
Are you trying to say that now we're all responsible to implement what you're just presenting?
No, I don't give a shit. No, frankly. No, in a way, I really don't. My job was to give you the information, and then you figure out what to do with it. So, you know, how accountable you want to be, that's just up to that little still small voice inside of you as to whether you want to be there or not. I absolutely guarantee that this creates more space, and I haven't found an easier way to do it. Otherwise, I'd teach that. So if you want to get it with as little effort as possible, and you want that kind of result, you know, you can't poke a hole in this, but you do have to do it.
All right. Ну что, друзья, еще один вопрос, пожалуйста. One more.
David, my name is Evgeny, and I'm using your system, I think more than 10 years. I'm a businessman and I'm a CEO and owner, and I'm sure that your system helped me to increase my productivity from 30 to 50%. Thank you very much. Then I would like to ask you, what is the next step of your system? What do you think would be the next stage?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Check with Slava. We now have a level 2 and a level 3 training about this. It's still the same material in a way, but it takes parts of this, the more sophisticated parts of this, and explores and expands them in more detail, and especially project focus and areas of focus, some of the higher horizons, essentially, that I talk about, because we only touch on those to begin with, but that's really where the core of a lot of creative and strategic thinking will emerge, is working at those levels. So, if you haven't done those yet, check those out. Read the book again. I had somebody read my book 15 times. He said it's a totally different book every time he read it, because he was ready for another level of the information and another level ready to understand and actually to implement. So just stick around the material. My biggest miracle is that I made a career out of 12 things. Don't tell anybody that. And also, the cool thing is I don't have to change anything I say, no matter who I talk to, because this is a universal issue out there. There's no gender bias, there's no cultural bias, there's no age bias, there's no level of management bias to this. So the nice thing about it is you will keep getting better at this the more you stay at it. So there may be another level of the onion to unpeel, as we say. I'm still unpeeling them after all these years. Subtleties.
My question, I'm Alexandra. My question about the personal life, because our private life, it have to be included in all the schedule. Not in the schedule, but in real life. And sometimes it's not a question what we can make some list with some points and make some steps, because it's not technology, it's about heart. You understand me, yes? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we have follow-up for some ideas, some things, because this is a problem and I can to reach some goals, because it's about children, about husband, about, I don't know, some parents and some personal problems. So if you have some decision, what have we do to reach the calmness? Mm-hmm. Because there is in one hand, we have work tasks, mm-hmm. work schedule, and at the same time, we'd like to take a balance, trying to include some personal point.
Sure.
And sometimes, I know because it's my experience, when you have a very good, successful career, but at the same time, there is something happen which avoiding you from this life, and you take a lot of attention mm-hmm. For something else that yep. It can be dissolved. Or
I understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, I understand. Good question. Interestingly, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not even a therapist. And yet, this thought process can be applied to those more subtle things. If I were to spend time with you personally and you wanted me to coach you about that, I'd say, well, great. Alexandra? What's your name? I forgot your name. Anyway, Alexandra. I'd say, great. What would it be like if you didn't have the problem you're talking about? How would you be? In other words, what is your desired outcome here in terms of quality of life, balance, relationships, whatever? What are you trying to, what would be a successful outcome for you about all of that? Right? You give me that answer, guess what my next question is? What's your next action? What would you need to do to move toward whatever that outcome is? And I'm not saying this is easy. You might have some challenging things to deal with in that way. But again, there are no problems, they're only projects. You may find out that you're going to have to move a lot of things to someday maybe and take them off your project list, given your priorities. You may find out you need to hire somebody to take care of kids or company or your job or a personal assistant. You may find out there are a lot of things you could discover, but you're going to have to ask that question first and come up with some sort of an answer that will then put you back in the driver's seat about that instead of feeling the victim to it. Does that make sense? Because the way you explained it to me, you are the victim to your life right now. Sorry, you're at effect of, I've committed to this, and I've committed to that, and oh my God. And I say, great. How would you like to be? Oh, David, you would like to be cool and have it all together and feel comfortable about what I'm doing here and what I'm doing there. Great. What's your next action? What would you need to do to create that scenario or find out if you can't change it? Because see, you don't complain about the things you know you can't change. You're only complaining about things that you think could, would, should be different than they currently are. You're just not appropriately engaged with making them so yet. Hope you don't mind the hard news. That is kind of the hard news. Is like that's, and thanks for bringing that up. Most everybody here can probably relate to personal or issues or problems that they're perceiving in their life that are potentially exhausting or taking their energy. And the challenge is, great, how would you like that situation to be? What would you need to do to move toward closure on that? And that will give you a lot of clarity about a lot of things if you're willing to sit down and hold yourself to that self-consulting process. I hope that helps.
Okay, and we do have one last question. Yes.
Thank you for your good and very excellent team. And I want to ask you, what about experience, the best experience in your life as an advice for the leader of the big company, of Ukrainian company, how to implement your methods to the team, not only for one person, and how we can integrate these methods to all team?
Yeah, good question. You know, we've spent time over a lot of years working with a lot of people within organizations and seeing huge results happen for everybody around them, for whole teams. See, even if one person in an organization starts to implement this, it improves every single intersection you have. This is all about improving the intersections you have. How you manage agreements with your assistant, with your direct reports, with the board that you're dealing with all, and mostly with yourself. How do you manage those intersections so that they move up the food chain and you're operating at a different level? Then when people get around you and you say, by the way, can we chat? Because there are these 5 things that I've given you. You know, how are we doing on that? Do you need any help? That changes the nature of that professional relationship. They start to know you care and that this stuff is important and that it's important that they consider it important and work with it that way. So these behaviors can change with osmosis all around you. The truth is that these principles apply to teams as well as to enterprises. What are you trying to accomplish? You know, just don't start meetings without saying, what are we trying to do? You know, trying to do anything, because this is just good productivity consulting. What outcomes are we after, and what do we need to do to allocate resources to make them happen? What are the projects? Who owns them? What do we need to keep track of? So it's still a capture, clarify, organize, and reflect process. The action steps themselves oftentimes have to be left to the individuals involved to make sure when they walk out of that meeting with you, they deal with it, as opposed to let it fall through a crack and have to have you follow up with them. So the degree to which a team does this automatically moves the whole team up the food chain. Automatically, you don't have wasted meetings. The biggest complaint from executives are emails and meetings. And bad emails lead to bad meetings, which lead to bad emails, which lead to bad meetings, which lead to, oh my God, just gag me. But when you get a culture that starts to think outcome and action, why have I been invited to this meeting? What exactly are we trying to accomplish? How can I contribute? That's a different conversation. So building all of these behaviors in and around you and have them go through a seminar, or give them my book, or whatever it is, so at least they have information about what this model is, and then you can model it, obviously. That's a huge way for them to learn what it is, and hold them accountable to the results. Hold them accountable to the results. People often ask me, I've been married to Catherine for 30 years, they say, what's Catherine's system? I have no idea, nor do I care. I just know where her in basket is. She knows where mine is. I have a waiting for list of things she's doing. She has one for me. We don't need anything more than that. You know, and it makes the business of life much cleaner, much clearer. So when we hang out together, we just have dinner. We don't have, well, did you handle? Are you going to handle? You know, come on. So people often think this is a mechanical process. I email my wife while she's sitting, you know, 5 meters away from me. Why? Why interrupt her? Why force her to make a decision about something that she hasn't had time to think about with me standing in front of her? Talk about impolite. And if you don't handle mechanical things through the mechanical process, it'll start to make your relationships mechanical. Then you get together, well, are you going to handle? I thought we'd tell, but didn't you say? God. So Catherine and I, all that stuff is handled through our own system, personal systems, so that when we get together, we don't have any of that going on. It's going on in the system. So does that make sense? Then you have a chance to be a lot more human and loving and present with people at work, with all your relationships, because the system and the systematic process is elegant, it's clean, it's nice and clear. It's the lack of clarity that often creates the biggest stress out there. Yeah, got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.